All right, let's dive right in. We're about to unpack the files on a man who literally designed our modern world, only to have history pretty much erase him from the picture. His name was Nikola Tesla. And get this, over 100 years ago, this guy was dreaming up things like Wi-Fi, remote controls, the very electricity that powers our homes. He basically laid the groundwork for our entire wireless world. But here's the twist. Despite giving us all these incredible inventions, his own life, well, it ended in poverty and obscurity. A true genius who changed the world, and he died with practically nothing to his name.
He was found right here in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. He lived there for the last 9 years of his life, and when he passed, he was months behind on his bills.
And this is where the story takes a turn. The moment he died, the FBI swooped in and seized all of his research. So you have to ask, right? What were they looking for so frantically? And how is it that the man who basically architected the 20th century is just a footnote in our textbooks?
Okay, so to really get how he fell from grace, you have to understand that the first attempt on his life wasn't, a physical one. It was an economic assassination. And it all kicked off with one of the most famous rivalries in science, the War of Currents.
So, back in the late 1800s, the big name in electricity was Thomas Edison, and his system was called direct current, or DC. The problem? It was clunky, expensive, and you couldn't send power more than a mile or two. Then comes Tesla with his alternating current, AC. It was a total game changer, cheaper, way more efficient, and it could send electricity for hundreds of miles. You can see why this was a massive threat to Edison's entire business.
Edison didn't take this lightly. He launched this really nasty smear campaign, even publicly electrocuting animals with AC power to try and scare people. But Tesla, well, he fought back in the most Tesla way possible, by passing electricity through his own body to prove it was safe. And then, boom, 2 huge wins that settled the debate. First, he lit up the entire Chicago World's Fair. Then he did the impossible and harnessed the power of Niagara Falls. The war was over. Tesla had undeniably won. And this quote, it really tells you everything you need to know about the man. He wasn't in it for the money. His mission was to push humanity forward. A beautiful idea, right? But tragically, that very ambition would end up being his greatest weakness. So get this, his business partner, George Westinghouse, was about to go bankrupt because of that war with Edison. And to save the company and the future of AC power itself, Tesla did something absolutely unthinkable. He tore up his royalty contract. We're talking a contract that would have made him the world's first billionaire. He just walked away from it all. Okay, so with AC becoming the standard, Tesla set his sights on his biggest, most audacious dream yet, the Wardenclyffe Tower. And this thing wasn't just for sending messages. No, his plan was to transmit electricity through the air to anyone on the planet for free. And he actually got funding from the biggest money man of the era, JP Morgan.
Now, Morgan was on board thinking this was about wireless messages, a sort of global telegraph. But then Tesla laid out his real vision, free, unlimited energy for every single person. Morgan, who owned power plants and copper mines, saw his whole empire just evaporating. His legendary question was, where do we put the meter? And when he found out there wasn't one, he pulled the plug. He cut off all funding and made sure Tesla would never get another dime from Wall Street. Just like that, the dream was dead.
So that was his economic death. But years later came his actual physical death. And let me tell you, the circumstances around it are just as suspicious.
Officially, they said it was a heart attack, but the details, they just don't sit right. For one, there was a do not disturb sign on his door for 2 whole days before anyone checked on him. Then, a medical examiner somehow declared the exact time of death, 10:30 p.m., which is basically impossible back then without witnesses. And maybe the weirdest part? The government agency that seized his work was the Office of Alien Property. But Tesla was a US citizen. Why use them?
And this is where the government seemed to find the perfect narrative to push, the story of Tesla's so-called death ray. See, years before, Tesla couldn't pay a hotel bill, so he gave them a mysterious box as collateral, telling them it held a weapon that could wipe out 10,000 airplanes from hundreds of miles away. So after he died, the FBI had it opened, and inside, just a common old electrical component. It was the perfect story to paint him as a washed-up genius whose secret inventions were all in his head. It was a great way to publicly discredit all of his wilder ideas, right? But here's the question. What if the box was a decoy and the weapon itself was actually real? Because
Fast forward a few decades, declassified documents from a Tesla museum pop up, and guess what? They detailed the technical specs for a particle beam weapon. Then, in the 80s, you have Reagan's Star Wars initiative, which used principles straight out of Tesla's research. And even today, systems like Israel's Iron Beam look an awful lot like a modern version of Tesla's concept. So it makes you wonder, was the death ray the hoax? Or was the real hoax the story that it was a hoax?
So Tesla's dead. His craziest ideas have been publicly laughed off. And that's when the final act of this tragedy begins. The mission to completely erase his name from the history books.
And here's maybe the most outrageous example of all. We're all taught that Guglielmo Marconi invented the radio, right? He even won a Nobel Prize for it. Except the US Supreme Court later confirmed that Marconi's invention was built using 17 of Nikola Tesla's patents. Tesla was the real father of radio, but Marconi is the one who got all the credit.
And what about all that research the FBI took? Those 80 trunks from his hotel room? Well, after years and years of his family begging, they got a tiny little bit of it back. The rest, the vast majority of his life's work, is still classified by the US government, even today, for national security reasons.
So when you put it all together, you have to ask why? Why bury the guy? Because Tesla wasn't just some inventor, he was a revolutionary. His ideas about free energy didn't just threaten a company, they threatened the entire economic system. You can't put a meter on free energy. So the system that couldn't profit from him suppressed him. But now it feels like his legacy is finally starting to reemerge.
You know, maybe on some level, Tesla knew this was coming. He seemed to understand that his ideas were just too big, too soon, and he put his faith not in the powerful people of his time, but in the future, in us.
Because Tesla's story isn't just about something that happened a long time ago. It's a warning. And it leaves us with a really uncomfortable question. If one man's genius could be buried for 80 years, what other incredible innovations aren't we being told about today? When world-changing ideas clash with profit and power, which one usually wins?